I thought I knew my wife of 17 years until her phone accidentally called mine during her girls' night out, and I heard everything. 7 years of what I thought was a perfect marriage shattered in an instant when I realized the woman I loved was living a double life right under my nose. My name is Julian Pierce. I'm 46 years old, and I run a cybersecurity company that I built from scratch. I've spent 15 years building unbreakable code and a supposedly unbreakable marriage. Turns out only one of those was secure. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs that were right in front of my face. They started small, barely noticeable in the day-to-day rhythm of our lives together. Victoria, my wife, had always been an ambitious executive, but suddenly, things shifted. The way she'd angle her screen away when I walked past. The way she'd step outside to take certain calls. How she'd started showering as soon as she got home from work. She changed her phone password, said it was because of some security update at work, but she'd never bothered with that kind of thing before. Our conversations grew shorter, more functional. I told myself it was work stress, that she was adjusting to a new position, but I was wrong, and by the time I figured it out, everything I thought I knew was already gone. One Tuesday night, I was fixing the garbage disposal she'd been complaining about for weeks. I was deep in the mundane routine of domestic life when my phone lit up with a midnight video call from Victoria. She was supposed to be at a networking event, but when I answered, the camera was shaking, tilted downward, and I could hear music thumping in the background. I didn't say hello, just listened. "I can't keep pretending anymore," Victoria's voice came through, soft but clear. "I don't love him, I haven't for years." A man's voice responded, smooth and confident. "He doesn't even notice anymore. I could disappear tomorrow, and he'd probably be relieved. He's like furniture that I've gotten used to having around," she laughed bitterly. "Men think they owned you, we're not property." My hand tightened around the phone as I heard the unmistakable sound of a kiss. This wasn't some friendly peck, this was hungry, intimate. For 4 minutes and 12 seconds, my wife unknowingly broadcast her betrayal, my marriage disintegrating in real time as I listened stone-faced to their plans for the night ahead. The call disconnected when she finally realized her phone was active. I sat motionless in my home office, the code on my screen now meaningless. I'm not the kind of man who panics at the first sign of trouble. I deal with problems head-on, calmly and rationally. I didn't scream, didn't break anything. That's not my style. Instead, I approached this like debugging a critical system failure, methodical, precise. I opened a new terminal window and started typing. First, gather evidence, then execute a controlled shutdown. I started with the bank statements, joint account first, then Victoria's personal checking that I technically had access to but never looked at. The patterns emerged quickly, like they always do when someone's hiding something. I found a credit card statement with charges I didn't recognize, restaurants I'd never been to, a hotel downtown from 2 months ago, and several large purchases at stores that sold women's clothing, all on days Victoria had told me she was working late. Then my stomach dropped. A $6,240 couple's spa package just hit our account. She had been using our joint credit cards to buy expensive gifts, men's watches, clothing, and restaurant bills for 2 people. I stared at the numbers, adding them up in my head. She had spent over $40,000 on clothes, jewelry, hotels, and dinners, all of it related to her affair. But the financial deception went far deeper than luxury hotels. I logged into our retirement account, and the balance made my stomach drop. We'd had $340,006 months ago. Now there was $98,000. She took $242,000 from our retirement fund by forging my signature. That's forgery, that's a crime. The money had been funneled into a shell company. I tracked the transfers back. The beneficial owner was listed as EK Holdings, LLC, an offshore account set up to launder the stolen assets. My wife hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been actively plotting to destroy me financially while pretending to be the victim of my neglect. I needed to know exactly who she was seeing. I ran the number she was constantly calling through a reverse lookup service. Conrad Vane, an executive vice president at her firm. He was a tall fellow, expensive clothes, driving a black Escalade. The man my wife was sleeping with wasn't just her boss. He was a predator with a pattern, and I was about to become his worst nightmare. The next revelation was the one that truly broke me. While organizing paperwork in our home office, I found a receipt wedged between the couch cushions. A medical bill for genetic counseling that I'd never heard about. It wasn't for routine counseling, it was for paternity testing. I ordered a paternity test kit online, express delivery. 3 days later, the results came back. The lab results were clinical, matter-of-fact, devastating. Probability of biological paternity 0%. My 14-year-old son, Holden, wasn't biologically mine. For 14 years, I'd been raising another man's child, believing he was mine. Victoria had lied to me, to the courts, to everyone, even possibly to Holden himself. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. But the betrayal didn't end with infidelity and paternity fraud. I noticed she had been unusually interested in my cybersecurity business. She'd asked my best friend in operations manager a bunch of questions about my contracts, how much they were worth, when payments were scheduled. I checked the repository logs on our shared home server. Victoria had copied my proprietary algorithms, rebranded the presentation, and submitted it to Conrad's firm as her own work. She was selling trade secrets. I had the original drafts, the metadata, and third-party correspondence that predated her presentation by months. She hadn't just destroyed our marriage, she tried to destroy my business and put my employees' livelihoods at risk. I spent the next week documenting everything. I created an encrypted folder with time-stamped proof of her betrayal. I also did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I installed hidden security cameras in the living room. If she was going to play games with our family's future, I was going to make sure I knew all the rules. I called my lawyer, Oliver Stone. He was 62 years old, semi-retired, and the most dangerous lawyer in the state when he wanted to be. I need you to handle my divorce, I told him when I walked into his office. My wife's been cheating with her boss, stealing my money, and she committed paternity fraud. I want everything documented. Oliver reviewed the evidence, his expression shifting from curious to grim. This is beyond a compliance issue, he said finally. This is a pattern of deception, fraud, and manipulation. Do you still have that prenup we drew up before you got married? He asked. Yes, I replied. Good, Oliver said, pulling up the document. According to this agreement, if either party commits adultery, they forfeit any claim to marital assets. Specifically, Clause 7C states that in the event of marital infidelity involving undisclosed financial transactions, the entirety of marital assets reverts to the non-offending party. The prenup is ironclad, I noted quietly. We need to move fast, Oliver advised. First, I'm filing the divorce petition tomorrow morning. Second, we're going to freeze all joint accounts, every credit card, every bank account with both your names on it. I transferred every dollar from our joint accounts that was mine by right, leaving only what she contributed. I restructured how the title to the house was held, creating an LLC to hold the property. By the time she woke up, I was already a ghost in our financial life. I decided I wouldn't confront her in private. She had spent months humiliating me behind my back, mocking me to her lover. She was going to face the music in daylight. The breaking point arrived perfectly timed at our 20th anniversary party, a lavish event she had organized at an upscale hotel downtown. I wore my navy suit, the one I'd tailored years ago. Victoria hissed across the reception hall, complaining I didn't look appropriate. She was busy networking, leaning across the table, totally oblivious that the foundation of her carefully constructed world was shifting beneath her feet. At dinner, Victoria stood up. She raised her wine glass and announced to everyone, Conrad comes first in this house. He always has, and he always will. You're always second, Julian. The room murmured uncomfortably, but I smiled and kept eating. Good to know where I stand, I said quietly, picking up my water glass. Conrad Vane was sitting across the room, wearing an expensive suit and a smug grin. What they didn't know was that my software system, Beacon Core, the very software they had stolen to build their new multi-million-dollar platform, had a specific clause buried in its license. Clause 7 stated that any affiliated party contributing to derivative works without authorization would trigger immediate termination of all usage rights. I always keep the kill switch in my own hand. I pulled out my phone, opened my messages, and found the thread I needed. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for just a moment, then I typed 5 words and hit send at exactly 3:59 p.m. It's time. Execute the plan. Across the room, Conrad's phone started ringing. Not buzzing, ringing, the kind of call that bypasses do not disturb settings because it was marked urgent. He answered it, and I watched the color drain from his face like someone had pulled a plug somewhere. His entire multi-million-dollar stolen platform was crashing down in real time, locking his company out and returning control to me. I stood up from the table, grabbed a thick manila folder, and walked over to Victoria. "We need to talk," I said calmly. "No." I led her down a side hallway into a private room away from the guests. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "You embarrassed me in front of my colleagues." "I embarrassed you?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. "I watched you practically dance with another man out there. I know everything, Victoria. The hotel rooms, the deleted text messages, the $242,000 you stole from our retirement accounts." Her face went completely white, actually white, like someone had drained the blood from her body. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. I slid the folder across the table. "Read your own contract. Infidelity plus financial misconduct equals you lose everything. The house, the accounts, everything. Furthermore, the DNA test confirms Holden isn't mine. He's Conrad's." Her composure completely shattered. Her eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. "You think you're so clever," she hissed, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly cold tone. "But you have no idea what's coming." She marched into the adjacent kitchen area of the suite. I followed, keeping my distance. She opened a drawer, grabbed a knife, and before I could even process what was happening, she sliced her own arm. Blood seeped between her fingers from a deep cut. She dropped the knife on the counter, scrambled away from me, and pulled out her phone, dialing 911. "Please help me," she sobbed into the phone, her voice entirely different, theatrical, desperate. "My husband attacked me with a knife. I think he's going to kill me." She lowered the phone, looked me dead in the eyes, and whispered, "Nothing will save you from this. I'm going to make you suffer until you die." Minutes later, sirens wailed in the distance. The police burst in, guns drawn. As they handcuffed me and read me my rights, I caught Victoria's eye one last time. Behind the fake tears was a gleam of triumph. She'd orchestrated the perfect revenge. But she made one critical mistake. I spent that night in a freezing holding cell. The next morning, my lawyer, Oliver Stone, walked in looking grave. "She's filed for an emergency restraining order and frozen your joint accounts," he said. "I transferred my money out yesterday," I replied calmly. "And the assault?" Oliver smiled, a gleam of a predator who's cornered his prey. "I accessed the hidden security cameras you set up in your living room and connected to the cloud. The recording clearly captures her threatening you, picking up the knife, and injuring herself." At the bail hearing the next day, Victoria sat across the aisle looking like the victim, dabbing her eyes with tissues. The prosecutor stood up, ready to throw the book at me. Then Oliver played the video footage for the judge. The courtroom went dead silent. The judge, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, studied the prosecutor. "Counselor, do you wish to proceed given this new evidence?" The prosecutor requested a brief recess. When court reconvened, he cleared his throat. "Your Honor, in light of the new evidence, the state requests immediate dismissal of all charges against Mr. Pierce." The judge banged her gavel. "The DA's office is dropping all charges against you," Oliver announced. "And they're filing charges against Victoria for filing a false police report, obstruction of justice, and attempted fraud." Victoria was escorted out of the courtroom in handcuffs. The fallout was catastrophic for her. A courier delivered her eviction notice after her cards were blocked. She had 30 days to find somewhere else to live. Because of the morality clause in her contract and the revelation of her industrial espionage, her company fired her. Conrad Vane was arrested by the FBI for corporate fraud and embezzlement related to the stolen software. When he faced federal prison, he abandoned Victoria immediately, leaving her penniless. During the divorce proceedings, Victoria's attorney tried to fight, but the prenuptial agreement was ironclad. The court found that her adultery and financial misconduct triggered Clause 7C. I retained full ownership of the house, my business, and 100% of my financial assets. She walked away with nothing but her personal belongings and one symbolic dollar. As for Holden, I didn't abandon him. "Biology doesn't make a father," I told him, looking into the eyes of the boy I'd raised for 14 years. "I've been your dad since the day you were born, and I'll be your dad until the day I die." The court granted me primary custody, citing Victoria's criminal charges and unfitness as a parent. 6 months later, I watched the sunset from the deck of my house. Victoria was living in a small apartment across town, working as a receptionist at a dental office. She had called me once, crying, asking if there was any chance we could work things out. "I don't even know who you are," I had told her calmly. "You made your choices." Now live with the consequences. I hung up, blocked her number, and never looked back. I had survived the ultimate betrayal. I built a new life based on honesty, hard work, and mutual respect. And for the first time in years, I felt something unexpected: freedom. I was finally free.